All right, so for this week's podcast, I'm going to be talking to Chris from Buy the Same Token. He's the founder, right? He started the whole thing. He started the company. Everything that you see what it is now today started with him. And it was a really cool conversation. We got to talk about the token making process, how they come up with new ideas, why tokens cost money, because I know people like to talk about that, and also some stuff about him personally and kind of his interests and hobbies within the industry. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. Make sure you go support Buy the Same Token. I have a link down in the description that will get you 5% off of your order there. It supports not only me and the channel, but supports Buy the Same Token. And you get some really cool tokens out of it that I use on stream all the time. So anyway, hopefully you enjoyed this episode and I'll see you next time. So, okay, first, if you don't mind, just kind of introduce yourself, who you are and I guess how Buy the Same Token got started. Because that's my big question. I want to know how it got started.
Oh yeah, okay, all right. So all of that in one go, yeah. All
Yeah.
right, cool. Yeah, okay. So my name's Chris, and I'm I guess you'd say, the owner of By the Same Token, and By the Same Token is a company that started with just me, and I started making accessories for the games that I was playing. So that started with X-Wing. So I got big into X-Wing, and at the time there was a lot of tokens. This was one of FFG's, I mean, they've made many games, but like this game came with a lot of tokens and cardboard templates more specifically as well. And they very quickly not only wore out, but they were very inaccurate as well, it found, so like between cardboard sets there was all this deviation in like measurements, and I'm pretty sure I'm certain I was not the first person that thought, I'm gonna make some acrylic versions
Uh,
of these. I must have seen some somewhere else online, very basic ones or whatever, and thought, I can just make my own. I don't need to buy these. At the time I was working as an architectural model maker, so that's basically what I've done. I studied model making, and I got into architectural mainly because I like miniatures and things like that. So it was always a thing for me to go into architectural. You make things of all various scales. I'm sure you've seen what an architectural model looks like.
yeah.
And the company I was with at the time, I was effectively the only guy there. The job was sort of sold to me as the workshop manager. So that was the natural progression for me to become a workshop manager, right? And it turned out it was just me. So I was just managing myself. And but that gave me access to this machinery that I was able to use in my free time, basically. So started off by making my own X-Wing templates and tokens, because at the time when that game came out, as I say, very addicted to that game. Um, I ended up selling a lot of my older sort of stuff that I'd been collecting and hoarding over the years. So lots of old Warhammer stuff. Stuff I
Mm.
wish I parted with now. Because just so I could buy more X-Wing ships. But what I did have was lots and lots of fancy accessories to go with those ships. So, and taking them to clubs and tournaments and things, people were like, these are cool, like, do you make these? Do you sell these? Da, 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 da. So I thought, that's interesting. So I started by making just three
Mhm.
sets of tokens, very basic. They were single-sided at the time, no paint at all, very straight up things. Put them on eBay, and they were kind of gone in like less than 24 hours or whatever. I was like, okay, there's demand, like,
Yeah.
so yeah. Then it became a question of like just experimenting with more stuff, I guess, and uh, painting it, double siding it, more designs, and that quickly spiraled into lots of people getting in touch, going, "Oh, have you thought about doing?" People buying the
Mm.
X-wing stuff. Would you like? Have you considered doing things for Armada? Have you considered doing things for Imperial Assault? And that actually opened my eyes up to a lot of other games as well, right? So
Uh-huh.
like, so FFG became a thing, and there was no end of like, but a lot of it, that it was time. So a lot of it was making stuff for the games that I was playing,
Mm.
and in fact, I mean, a lot of the games that I'm playing now, I guess, are from people's recommendations of, oh, have you heard of this game? Like, you could make some tokens for that. And so I'd play that, and then sure enough, yeah, get into it. And then it became accessorizing everything that we did for. So I'd actually even go back to old games at that point. So
Mhm.
games like Man O' War. So going back to Games Workshop stuff. I don't know if you're aware of like Man O'
Sure.
War or anything like that,
Yeah, I've
right?
heard of it.
Yeah, it was a great game. Like, full of rules problems, but just amazing. Little miniature ships, and but half the table would be like all templates and tokens that you'd add onto your ships as they take damage and stuff. And so I literally went over to that whole game, and again in my free time was just like acrylicing everything in that thing, and making like every ship card was like an acrylic template with like little tokens you could slot into things and that,
Yeah.
And yeah, it just got out of control, really. But that was never for anyone. That was all just like a personal project sort of thing, and no one was going to buy into those things so much later on. Um, and then what happened? I guess what happened is I kind of talked to my bosses at the time, and that was starting to take off. So I was working there full time, obviously, and then I was doing that on the side. So I'd be coming home with stuff, and then
Mm.
packaging that up and posting that, handwriting letters at night, and then taking them to the post office the next day or something, and then going to work. And then eventually went down, talked to my bosses, said, would it be okay if I went down to a 4-day week? Thought about getting a little studio just down the road from where I live. It was a little office space. And so my Fridays would be at BTST. That was when we kind of like officially started as By the Same Token. And I was really excited to get to Fridays, because I get to go to the studio and make stuff, and they just weren't, the days weren't long enough. But I mean, I guess at that point I was then also working like just full time, like, so I'd be
Sure.
working on weekends, nights and stuff, just to sort of keep these two things going. So I obviously had a sort of 4-day full-time job, if you like, and then this side gig where it was evenings and weekends and all the rest of it. And to the point where it came where I couldn't sustain doing both, right? It
Mhm.
was like 80-hour weeks. Um, and so I had to take the plunge and go full time. But we took a plunge on it, and at the same point as well, my wife, who was also working just down the road from where I worked at another architectural practice, but as the admin,
Okay.
and I sort of poached her from that job and said, "You got to help me," like, And so the both of us were doing it, and she would be helping me. She was essentially dispatch at that point, like she was passing all the stuff together and taking stuff down to the post office. And then we sort of made that the unit we were in. We bought the one, well, we rented the one next to it, and
Mhm.
so it grew a little bit, and to the point that became too big because started taking on one person, then another person. And the people we were taking on. So one of the first people I took on was my brother, who's now the workshop manager, basically.
Okay.
And these are circumstances that kind of happened at the time. So when COVID hit, he was a chef, right? And that the catering industry and the restaurants all just took a really big hit at that
Sure.
time. And so he was in desperate need of a job, and he got really like unfortunate in that because he'd always had a job, always kept that same job sort of thing, and he decided to change job just as COVID happened, sort of thing. And so there was this furlough scheme in the UK, right, where like if you couldn't, they would pay your wages if you like,
Okay.
and so he ended up. It just started with me. It was like he was like, "I'm really interested in what you do, actually." And he was never as much into games as me, but
Mhm.
still enjoyed. Every time he'd come around, we'd play something. And so he started doing that. And because he lived down in Brighton, which is where I'm originally sort of grew up, if you
Okay.
like, and at the same time a friend of mine who's also helping me with like the Facebook and social side of things, he also lived in Brighton, and he was kind of doing that on the side for me as well. And so we said, I don't know, no, great idea, let's move the studio down to Brighton, and we'll move back to Brighton from London as well, and we can all work in Brighton in BTST. Anyway, so in the end what happened was we got a new studio down in Brighton. We headed that up, just the two and a half of us, sort of thing. And then we decided not to move to Brighton in the end. We sort of stayed in London, and I've been commuting to Brighton ever since for the last 3 years, basically, to sort of get the studio up and running. And now we've got, well, a few more people, so
Yeah.
effectively the place is kind of like, it can run without me being there necessarily all the time, which is nice, So yeah, now I'm working at home Monday, Tuesdays, go down on a Wednesday, come back for the weekend. So
That's awesome. That's awesome.
yes,
Was it, like, nerve-wracking, like, getting people on board? Because, like, in America, like, that's, like, one of the biggest worries. Like, once you start, like, involving employees, like, well, now
yeah,
we have to worry about quality control, we have to worry about this, we have to worry about other people, we
yeah.
have to worry about laws and regulations. Like, was that a stressful time, or were you just like, "No, we need it, we're expanding, let's just do this," you know?
Yeah, I guess every new member that joined was just out of necessity, right? Like
Mm,
we not being able to cope, you know. So um, w- I'd be doing. I've kind of done every aspect of the business at this point, you know,
okay.
from designing stuff to actually making it and packing it and all the rest of it. So every role that's been filled has been to sort of like cover another area, right? Like in the grand scheme of things. Um, but yeah, it's a whole nother thing. It's like, you know,
Yeah.
this is something I'm learning a lot of. I'm, you know, business ownership, right? Because I'm a maker at heart. Like, you know, I
Mm,
like to make. So, but I'm finding it quite hard to sort of let go. I don't want to let go of that. You know, I want to
sure.
be part of the studio, and I'd like to keep an eye on everything, right? But we've definitely got a really good team of guys, of people, just guys and girls, and they're great, and I can leave them to it. I can, you know, and
That's good.
I don't want to because I want to be part of it, but at the same time, they're so good and capable of what they do. Like, so very lucky. You
That's awesome. So
know?
when you first got started, was it excuse me, laser cutters that you were using? Was it water jet? Like how were you making the tokens?
No, yeah, it's laser cutters. So
Okay.
I so we back when I was making models, it'd be all manner of machinery and equipment. So stuff I'm sure you're familiar with as well, right?
Sure.
So anything from circular saws, band saws, sanders, all the rest of it, drills,
Mhm.
CNC cutters, and laser cutters. When I changed that, when I went to this workshop manager position for this architectural practice, this was very much a sketch model shop. Sketch model shop's kind of like a model shop that the architects use to make very basic models, like out of foam, using foam cutters,
Okay.
hot wire cutters, you know, and they also had a laser cutter there, a laser cutter that I was very used to using, a brand of laser cutter that I was used to using as well. And so when I joined that company, I kind of introduced acrylic. So acrylic was always my favorite medium, like, you know, made models out of all sorts of things, wood, acrylics, and all sorts. But always loved acrylic, always loved acrylic for its precision and finish and the rest of
Yeah.
it. And I introduced acrylic to this architectural practice and they loved it. And so then the laser cutter became my primary tool, right?
Okay.
For and that just lent itself so well to the accessory making, like, you know. So yeah, that's the evolution of that. But
And the process overall over time has been basically the same, or has it been refined? Has it been changed, or just get, I guess, bigger machines?
yeah, no, the machine as a size has actually stayed the same. So
Okay.
I've always operated the same size machine, same bed size of laser, which is 720 millimeters by 420 millimeters.
Okay.
I've worked on bigger lasers before, but it just so happened to coincide with the perfect sheet size of material that I had available to me as of now, right? So
Yeah.
you can it kind of comes in big 8x4 sheets that get cut down to size, but like they tend to offer them in standardized size, and this machine tends to house them really well. So um, yeah, that's so
Yeah.
answer the
So
question.
no, 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 that's perfect. Because then, so when you start painting them now, is that done by hand? Is that also done by machine? How's that done?
Yeah, yeah, it is done by hand.
Okay.
As I say, when I first started, there was no painting involved. Then I started
Okay.
experimenting with painting. So it's a very laborious process, really, of kind
Sure.
of um, like it's paint out of a tube, sort of squeezed over a sheet, and then I used to rub it in with a rag, and then you let it dry in it, but not too much, you know, and then you kind of rub it off, like
Yeah.
to sort of get the excess off, you know. You may have to repaint it because you'd be pulling it out as well. This is all this learning process with types of etches as well. If you've got like too dense an etch, then you end up pulling the paint out again and all the rest of it, you know. Um, if you think of it kind of like a screen printing now, so it's by
Okay.
hand, right? But we're not necessarily painting everything with a little brush or anything, right? So you're
Okay.
kind of, but it's definitely the word technique that you've got to kind of like get used to, you know. So the guys that we've got painting stuff at the moment, they have to learn this, you know, and it can be quite frustrating at times, right? There's definitely a technique to it, you know. But yeah, yeah. Hopefully, the thing is we've kind of there's a lot of UV printing out there at the moment, you know, and it's
Okay.
something that we've always thought we need to get on UV printing, right? It's like the new thing. It saves all that painting mess and all the rest of it. We looked into the cost. It's quite a big machine. It's like a laser cutter, really. Like you're
Okay.
essentially like print this sheet out, which you then offer up to the laser. The laser would have a camera on it, and then that would find the location so that you get the right cut profile to hit where you. So you've got this full sheet of like lots of prints. You then put
Yeah.
that into the laser cutter, and then it will cut each piece out. So it's a two-part process. But if I'm honest with you, like, I've never really liked the finish of like UV
Mm.
printed stuff. You get that raised surface as opposed to that etched surface. What you do get, I guess, as a benefit is like this multicolored. You could do any kind of color you want on there, any kind of print, right?
Okay.
It definitely has its advantages. You can see why so many things use signage uses UV printing. It's much
Yeah.
more efficient, right? You can do more things, but there's something about the feel of like an etched token that I still just love.
It's nice.
Like,
Yeah.
and it. I guess we've become the niche there, right? Because not everyone does that, So
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, yeah, that's kind of what you're known for, and it's hard to
yeah,
deviate
yes,
away from that, right? Like, hey, we used to be that, but trust us now, this is
yeah.
better.
Yeah, this is it. I mean, and all of that obviously has to be made in house, So a big part of that is that when you were talking about how we started and where we've got to now, we've just sort of grown incrementally. There's always been this thought in my mind, like yeah, of course we could like just come up with a design and just like have it sent to China and have it all printed out en masse or whatever, like. But I can't get away from that wanting that we have full control from
Yeah.
like design through to production through to dispatch. We can be reactive. We can rather than sort of going, I'm going to order that many of this over there and then worry about the quality control sort of thing. That could all be done in house, And yeah, I love having that control over that.
Well, yeah, I mean, like before we ever started working together, I purchased your products, and I remember I had like ordered a bunch, and I had one time there was like a mistake with one thing, something small, like one piece was forgotten. So I emailed you guys, I was like,
Yeah,
hey, this was done. You're like, it will be out there like tomorrow. It will be taken care of. Like we're
yeah,
putting it, and
yeah,
it's just like that's the right way to do things.
definitely. Like I mean, the service should be as good as the product, right? Like,
Yeah,
I think that I see that a lot when I look around social media that everyone's always praising the customer service, which is really nice to hear, like
yeah,
because that's how I feel like it should be done. That's how you treat others how you want to be treated, right? And I find it really really odd that some companies just don't have that approach. Like how
yeah,
can and it yeah, maybe they
yeah.
get too big and then they don't care so much. I don't know.
Yeah, no, yeah. I mean, definitely, it's different companies take different approaches, and sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. But obviously, it's worked
Yeah,
for you all, so that's all that
yeah.
matters.
Yeah, and there'll always be like I mean, we're really hot on quality control as well. It's all about like
Yeah,
sending out 8 mistakes, but if anything, like if there is a mistake, what you can do is you can make it right. So
got it.
like
Well, it's funny because I've gotten so many products from you all, and there was one time one of the tokens, it was a vision token, I remember, and it was yellow on one
and
side, green on the other side, and the yellow side had a
yeah.
speck of green on it. I was like, oh, buy the same token, finally made a mistake, like this is it. And then I hit it with my thumbnail, and it just like flecked right off, and I was like, oh, okay.
I
They
can tell you
didn't make.
exactly what that is. So yeah, what's what have happened is it's been painted on one side. It's been put on a table where there's obviously some paint left over, and a little fleck has got stuck to
Yeah,
that. And often, like you can just take those
just
off. It's
yeah.
not like permanent. Yeah. But still, yeah, it was missed. Yeah.
No, I mean, that's good to have that, that process and that overload. Because that's the thing, people invest in this stuff. It's money, right? It's obviously money, and you're taking care of that customer, which is the most important thing. So,
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's the other thing we get a lot. Is I mean, I think it's safe to say that we're probably one of the more expensive
sure.
suppliers of like of this type of accessories, right? But I also think that a lot of people just assume that this stuff is just like made in China, right?
Mm.
Or cheap labor markets, not necessarily China, right? But like cheap labor markets, and there's a lot of work that goes into it. Like yeah,
Yeah.
these guys do good work,
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, when I've always told people, because they'll say to me like, "Oh, D20, I'll love to invest in this, but it's money." I go, "Yeah, it absolutely is. But if you play this game every single day, if you play it every other day, like you're investing in your time in your product, and you might as. I mean, the joke is always you can get a Toyota, you can get a Ferrari, right? Toyota will get me A to B and it'll be fine, but Ferrari's gonna be a lot of fun.
That's funny because I don't believe I've had this conversation with you about that, but that's exactly the analogy that we always use, right? That you can get from A to B in a mini metro or a Jag, and which one do you want to do it in,
Yeah.
right? Like that has always been what we've talked about, and we've always aimed to be the Ferrari of the tokens, if you like, right? But
Yeah.
yeah, just funny that you should say.
No, I mean, because it's absolutely true, and it's like I said, I've always enjoyed the product. But yeah, it's great. So, all right, so you expand now. When you kind of your role that now that you're not having to be hands on as much, are you spending more
Yeah.
time kind of like researching new games? Is that kind of like what you'd be
You
doing?
know
You say?
what? That's what I should be doing, researching. You know, that should be my only job now is just playing games and seeing what's needed. You know? And I wish that was true, you know. But yeah, there's I'm still kind of in that phase of like I'm not even going to use the word detach because I don't want to detach. I'm never going to detach. You know, I'm always
Mm.
going to be in the studio. I'm always going to be chatting to, you know, I mean, when we talk about who we've got on with us, working with us at the moment, you know, we've got my brother John, who's the studio manager, who's just taken care of downstairs, and he's got a team underneath him now, several guys. And I basically don't need to worry about that anymore. Like the quality control side of things, all of like just the day-to-day running of orders, it's well under control, which is fantastic. And we've got the design side of things, right, where I still very much love to keep an up, have a hand in all of this, you know. But Ed and Nick are two main designers, you know, like they're just so capable, you know, and almost don't need to look at what they're doing because
Yeah.
they know exactly what's needed, and they just they're doing stuff way far above and beyond anything I was doing back on my own. I think, you know, and it's just so great to see
Yeah.
like these guys just producing such cool stuff. You know, I just love to see the cool stuff being made. Basically, you know, yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, so you had tokens, and then we eventually get into like what I would say is more complex things with like the hero boards, right? For Marvel
Yeah,
Champions or the villain boards.
yeah.
Like, how does that
Hmm.
process come about? Like, is it just a sketch idea and you're like, okay, let's build this out? Is how do you
Yeah,
do that?
pretty much. Yeah. So I remember the first thing we made. So somebody I've left out of all of this is my an old childhood friend, Simon, right? Who we were the ones who used to play games back in school. We got into fighting fantasies, we got into Warhammer and all that sort of stuff, right? That was what started it off, and ever since then we've obviously played lots of games, stuff like that. And the one that started it off was Arkham Horror, where
Mm,
he came to me and said, have you tried Arkham Horror? In fact, he was the one that actually gave me my first copy of X-Wing, right?
okay.
And he started it all. You could argue that he started it. And when he introduced, he said, "And you've got to play Arkham Horror. It's great." And he said, what I really need, is just a nice board to put all my tokens together for it and stuff like that." So actually, I think the first one was Arkham Horror
Okay.
Investigator board, not mistaken. But that came quite easily because like he would have an idea of what he wanted, let's say, and then I would just take that away and make something out of it, right? So making things, laser cutting things and sticking them together out of acrylic was just like second nature. So
Mhm.
this partnership of kind of like, I need this, let's design that, let's this has got to be 1920s themed or whatever it was, you know, like. And then it just kind of evolved, and there would have been so many Mark 1s, Mark 2s, so it would have started off as a basic, right, it needs to be about this side, the card is this size, these are the parameters you're working
Yeah.
to, these are the tokens we're designing, it needs to fit that, you need to have this many on there. And then you would kind of like to call sexify it, right? Where you would like then put all your artistry around it and stuff like that, you know. Oh, wouldn't this be cool if it had a magnetized lid so I could like keep it
Mm,
like contained when I put it in my bag and take it to the game club, like whatever it was, you know. So it started with that one, and then when Marvel Champions came around, wow, like, you know, like that was a big deal. Like everyone was
yeah.
very much into Marvel Champions, you know, and I was like, okay, well, let's do the Arkham treatment to Marvel Champions, right? Because at that point, we'd also made a Mythos set, I believe, you know. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that was like a practicality thing as well as an aesthetic thing, right? This ability to have the cards upright, to be able to read them, was just almost felt like
Yeah.
necessary, like that you needed something. And of course, you could use anything. You could use a
Sure.
book and prop it up in front of that, right? But that's not going to get you in the mood to play Arkham, is it? And then you had the encounter deck and all the rest of it, and then the myth, the sort of boombox that we called it, right? Where you had your
No.
tokens magnetized underneath that, all contained, that could be then packed away and stored. And when Marvel came along, again, this was me and Simon talking about the possibility of like a way of doing this, like
Yeah.
to display all these cards, and so yeah, we had the idea of this skyline, the Marvel skyline, or whatever, the New York City skyline,
Yeah.
and the hero board, yeah, it took on. It was just a trial and error thing until we got this ready exhaust thing. It was paramount that this card had to rotate like sideways, right? Because that was
Mhm.
necessary. It had to be easily accessible. It wasn't necessarily like that. It was quite nice because the hero board wasn't a superfluous thing at all. It was actually quite useful. Like when you had to exhaust your hero, flip your hero, it was easier to do on the hero board than it was without it. Even on a game mat,
Mhm.
yeah, you can pick that card up easy enough, but you've got that little space to get under it,
Yep.
flip it, turn it. And yeah, just the right amount of spaces to put some token. I mean, now the problem is with so many like additional stat boosts,
Running
damage, and
out
the
of
rest of
room,
it.
yeah.
You're in our room, right? Yeah, I mean, so actually, those hero dials, which was something I thought like we don't need hero dials, like we use tokens and we like tokens, like. But yeah, now I can see a use, right? If you're like running out of space to put your damage counters on. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I remember a while back, I think it was on your Instagram, you had a video of how you actually make it. And it was fascinating to me because like in
Yeah,
my head, I'm just like, oh no, you have like a board, and I don't know, a machine puts on whatever, but it ain't a machine. Like you all have measurements and squares and you're lining them up. Like it's precision.
for
It's
sure. Yeah.
crazy.
I mean, yeah. I mean that's the general tools of like the model maker, right? Like from
Yeah.
assembling things like that. That's how we would tend to build things. And so if you think about them on separate layers, they're just sheets, and you've got a series of components for each part. So I could tease one to you right now if you like. The
Sure,
one that's
yeah.
coming out this week. Um, okay, so here you go. Here's the new Avengers board that is coming
Look at
this Friday.
that. Love it.
And so what that is as you know, you've got like layers of acrylic there, right? So you've
Yeah.
got this back plate here, which is there's no paint on that, so that is a series, and so you can fit 12 of these on a sheet of our
Okay.
standard acrylic that we use. Okay, so this is going to be an unpainted component on the back here, yeah, or on the underneath if you like, and then the second layer, so that mirrored layer there, combined with this dark grey layer here, so that's going to be two parts, and they're going to be cut on two different sheets, obviously. That forms the next layer, so that's going to get stuck on that. Then you've got the spindle, what we call the spindle on top, which is going to be stuck to that, and then on this particular board, we've got this internal full security clearance part, right? They get stuck in afterwards. So, but each of those sheets, they'll get etched where needed, taken away, painted, then put back on the laser cutter and cut out, and then they're assembled. Yeah. So as you rightly say, with the squares and that, you're lining up because you don't want things flopping around all over the place. They need to be perfect. So. And then then you're using a standard, which seems to be standard now. So we use dichloromethane, which is a plastic weld essentially, right? So it's
Mhm.
fusing for acrylic, and that's now become readily available. I think, and that's what
Okay.
GW sells now. For assembling their plastic miniatures because they will become plastic now. So,
Okay.
but they weren't back in the day, right? They were all metal, and there was no such thing. But yeah, so yeah. As I say, there's a lot of
Yeah.
time that goes into like, and that's just the construction of one, right? You've got to
Sure.
design these things too, So,
Well,
but yeah.
yeah, let's talk a bit about the design. So like for that board specifically, like how do you
Hmm.
what's your design process? Like how do you all go through that? What do you think? Like is it just like, hey, let's start with the craziest idea and see if we could do it, or let's start modest and make it crazier?
Yeah, these guys are amazing. They're just like a wealth of knowledge. Like, you've got Nick, who's just great at engineering things to like a whole new level. It seems, Like I remember when we talked about the Iron Man board, and we had this crazy idea to make this board that like would assemble into like all these pieces and stuff. We thought that's just going to be so expensive. There's just no way we can do that. We should do it just for a laugh, but it never happened. But I don't know. The Iron Man board is probably one of the most complex to build. I think still, regardless, like. But no, I don't know. The design process these guys like Ed is just comes up with some amazing ideas, like and yeah, I don't have a huge amount of involvement. We'll tend to sit around
Mhm.
and discuss something like if we're talking about a new game to design for, we'll generally sit around, have design meetings about that kind of stuff. But then the guys will typically go off and they'll come back and we'll reconvene in like a
Okay.
week, like and then see where we're at, see what needs
Yeah.
changing. And these things need to be put practically through their paces as well. Do these dials spin smoothly? Are they comfortable to handle, etc., etc. There's so many little tweaks that go on. The amount of spares we get through to get to the final
Oh,
product. Just even if it's the smallest little design change in print or whatever it may be, let alone function. Yeah.
how roughly long would you say that process is? Like, let's say, okay, we know Shield Wave is coming out, so we're gonna do something, and then to get to like a product like that, is it like a week's worth of design, 2 weeks? Like, what is it roughly?
Depends really. Sometimes, I remember back when I was doing them when it was me designing, there'd be times when you'd spend whole days designing something only to
Yeah.
go scrap it completely and start again, right? But yeah, how long's a piece of string? I want to say like for a hero board, like it could be anything up to like a week or
Yeah.
something, right? To get that thing fully like drawn out, designed, like, and then here's the finished product. But that's again, give or take.
Mhm.
Um, Tokens as well, right? You can knock out like a few designs in a day, maybe, but other times it can take a bit longer if you can't make a decision on something and you're not happy
Sure.
with it. Um, yeah, things like the villain stand, they took a bit longer to sort of work out how that was all going to slot in together and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's evolved quite a bit. Like obviously there was all the additions as well for that. Like the
Mhm.
weatherboards and stuff. I think we've actually got to do some more stuff for that if I'm not wrong. It's on the list. Um, player side schemes, right? We need those.
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, that's the thing, like, as more comes out, do you ever get, like, not worried, but, like, you look at your old designs, you're like, "Okay, player side schemes, how are we gonna integrate this with the player
Oh,
board or whatever?" Like, you can't
yeah.
really plan for that, you know?
No, that's right. Some stuff gets made redundant after a while, and
Mhm.
it has to be revised. Yeah, that is just the way it is,
Just see how it
unfortunately.
goes. Yeah, 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 I get it. Um,
Um,
so the boards, oh, I'm sorry, with creating new pieces for different games, right? So I remember I talked to you a while back about Ashes Reborn, and I was like, I love this
hmm,
game. You should all do tokens so that I can play the tokens on the game. But I know it's not just like me you get stuff from, obviously. It's the
yeah.
community, right? You really lean into the community and you ask things like, when did that start? And,
Yeah.
kind of how does that process work?
Again, so a good chunk of it will be just people emailing.
Yeah.
I mean, that was something that took up a lot of my time. That I fortunately got help with now.
Mm.
Is messages. There'd be a good chunk of my day dedicated to responding to messages, and obviously a lot of them are order based, but then a lot of them are inquiry based or just shooting the breeze, like. Oh, have you thought about this? And
Yeah.
that just gets you going, and you start thinking about that, and that leads to another thing. But hopefully, the Discord we've got now is like every time I get that question now, I try and point people towards the Discord, right? Because then we can keep it all in one place, and everyone can see it, and then we can have discuss these new ideas and things. So there'll be a lot of it come from that. And there's obviously our own interests as well. So a lot of most of us in the studio are all into this stuff, and so we'll all be buying different games of different types, and that often lends itself to a product that needs to go on the design list.
Mhm.
And there's been stuff on the design list that has always been, yeah, we'll get to that, and then it gets bumped for something
Sure.
else because something gets released, like, oh, like you said, the new Shield expansion's coming out. It's like we've got to focus on that. That's an important one. Um, Marvel, I mean, going off on one here, but Marvel
Yeah.
Champions is like definitely our bread and butter.
Sure.
Like there's no question like that. Or just the living card games in general, right?
Yeah.
Because as you alluded to at the beginning of this chat, like you want to upgrade the components for the games that you play a lot of, and those tend to be the living card games. So living card games are a thing. They
Mhm.
keep us in business, I say. Um, And to a lesser extent, you've got miniature games and you've got board games, whereas board games tend to be a bit more one and done,
Sure.
so we don't tend to make a lot of stuff for board games, only for the ones we really, really like, which means if we like them, then the community tends to like them too, and there tends to be a reason to make the stuff. Like, for example, Arcs, I don't know if you're aware of
I've heard of it,
um,
yeah.
you get it, it's good, and
Yeah.
immediately like this needs some playables. It just does. It's just gonna make playing it so much more pleasurable.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, so living card games, they're the ones that get our most attention, and Marvel and Arkham tend to like feature quite regularly because there's always something to do for them.
Yeah.
Even now, we're still finding new things to like make.
Sure.
Usually token items, but and they come from the community.
Yep.
A lot of these suggestions come from the community. Because you guys are actually playing these things a lot more than we are, like, I mean,
We do have a
it could
problem. Yeah, we play a lot.
might be considered a problem. I'm envious. If anything.
There you go. But yeah, so that's actually interesting because like, it's always in the community we wonder like, okay, with these companies, like, is Marvel Champions like the top thing? Because they do the same thing with my channel, right? They're like, obviously I play a lot of Marvel Champions and like that's what
Yeah.
I focus in on, but obviously I want to do other things as well. I don't want to be like just tied to one thing. So do you think about that a lot? Just like, okay, we'll keep doing Marvel Champions until this runs out, and then whatever the next LCG is, that's what we'll get into. Because I know you guys are doing like TCGs too, which obviously is like
Oh,
another venture. So
yeah. I mean, this is it. I mean, you, we've got a lot of mouths to feed now, right?
yeah,
And so we have to look at it from a business point of view
sure.
as well, right? Where what is the next big thing,
Mhm.
like that we should be supporting, regardless of, chances are if it's a big thing we're going to like it too,
Yeah,
and that's all the more for it. So when SWU came out, that was just like, okay, SWU, big deal, right? We're looking forward to this is a big deal, we got to be hot on it. And it's probably the first time we did it right, I think, where we actually had our range. We got on it early. We had our range ready to be sort of launch and all that kind of thing. So while it was still hot on everyone's mind, it's still hot. Like,
yeah.
and I think we're set three. Um,
Well, yeah, your SWU tokens, the SWU dial specifically, like
I
that's
know, right?
my wife
Cool,
is still to this day.
cool.
It's just like this is the best thing
Yeah,
they've ever. That and your Lorcana dial, she loves that
it's
too
my
because the amount of
favorite.
work.
We do like we the Lorcana dials were one of like the first where we were just like, they look great,
Yeah.
and we've managed to do them in a way where they're actually pretty affordable.
Okay.
Like, they look great. However, we kind of want to go back to them and redesign them a little bit from
Mhm.
what we've learned dial making now up to this point. So if you take the SWU dial, for instance, you'll notice that that's got this acrylic, clear acrylic on the top, right,
Mhm.
with the numbers. Dials are. It helps to magnify these numbers. So now suddenly across the table, you can read that like quite clearly, like, very clearly compared to like the Lorcana dial where you're relying on a cutout within on that top layer of acrylic to see that digit below it, and it's actually really quite hard to read, like, from if you're not directly like next to it.
Yeah.
The opponent's score is not necessarily as easy, so kind of wanted to go back to the Lorcana dial and improve it. But yeah, you can see how that's going in terms of like dial production, like the SWU. I was blown away by when they showed me the SWU dials. I just thought, this is
Yeah.
fantastic. It was
Well,
Star Wars.
this is now important for listeners to hear this. Buy up all the Lorcana ones because they're going to go out of print and then they'll be worth more. That's what we do as
Yeah.
board game collectors, right? We buy everything up and then sell it when it's worth more.
Right. Yeah. These aren't trading cards, unfortunately. But yeah.
Yeah, right. So when a new product comes out, I mean, are you like we all wait release day for like the new Marvel Champions like news announcement, right? We know it's gonna be on
Mm,
Thursday and we're waiting around for it.
mm,
Are you all kind of the same way? You're like, okay, what's the next thing so that we can
yeah. Not only because, like, we're probably going to buy into that game too,
Yeah.
or whatever that may be. But at the same time, like, this is important for us now. Like, we need to see what we can also make for that game. Like,
Hmm.
it's going to be good. What new tokens are we going to have to make for this one? It's
Yeah.
great. And
And
so,
then
but I guess that's part of the problem as well, though, isn't it? Because all this stuff is kept quite tight,
yeah.
we don't know until it's out, in which case we can't necessarily be ahead of the game, right? So when it comes to a hero board, yeah, sure, we've got Shield, like we know the Shield's coming, right? So Shield board is on the way,
Mm.
but we don't know all the stuff that's in that box yet. So we have to wait till it comes out before we can start producing things for it a lot of the time. So they give us little teasers, don't they? You know, like a
Yeah.
few cards we'll see, so we'll know a few things. But other than that,
No, it's interesting to me because like even now, like we know there's four more heroes, right, in the Marvel Champions wave. We all know who they are. We have pretty good guesses, and so
yeah,
we
yeah,
can assume Falcon will probably be one, Winter Soldier's probably gonna be one, but like other than that, it's like who knows, you know?
yeah, yeah. I'm actually really looking forward to Maria. Actually, I think she's great.
I'm not a Maria fan.
Like, I know it seems to be split, man. I'm seeing this like like this community split on her, but I think she's cool. Like,
No, yeah. I
you know,
mean, I'm happy with the direction and the design. I mean, that's the most important thing to me is good design. Like, make it new, make it interesting, make it fun. And even if I don't like it, as long as it's different and good, let's go.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Um. So as far as you goes, I know we talked a lot about by the same token, but let's know Chris as an individual. What do you do
okay.
outside of token making?
I play a lot of games,
There
literally.
you
Like,
go.
that's literally it. Like, I'm told I play too many, and I keep saying I don't play enough. Which
Yeah.
is kind of true on both senses, I guess. So, um, oh, where to start?
What's your favorite
Yes,
game?
my favorite board game, or just game overall.
Do
It,
both. Do
yeah,
both.
yeah, okay. So off the top of my head, the first thing I always go to is Star Wars Rebellion. Like as soon as
Okay.
someone says, "What's your favorite game?" That's the first thing that pops into my head. Just as like this self-contained, like thematic experience for two people. It's just so cool. The games we've played of that like have always been
Uh,
so memorable, and I love it. And I've painted all the miniatures for it, and I've made, as you know, I've made all the stuff for it just to make that game as cool as it can be, basically. So off the top of my head, that one, but it's so hard, man. It's like trying to pick your favorite kid. Like there's just too many out there to name, isn't there? Right. It also depends on your mood, I guess.
yeah.
Mm. But I guess you could break it down into categories, couldn't you?
Sure.
What's
Yeah.
board game, what's your favorite TCG, all the rest of it. Um, I'd say Arkham Horror is a strong contender for like best campaign
Okay.
group cooperative play. Every game we played of Arkham has always been great and fun and just thematic, and we've always loved that. And we need to play more of it, quite frankly. Like that's also the problem with the game is that you have to like a D&D session. You've got to
Yeah.
commit to like everywhere, and since you're only meeting up maybe once a week to do that, like it can get tricky, especially when you've got to play 8 scenarios, right.
Yeah.
And so the temptation is to play these things solo, but that always bothers me as well. There have been times when I played the odd Arkham Horror campaign solo, or Marvel Champions one solo. They have their places, right? Like I remember taking the X-Men expansion
Mhm.
with a holiday, and I had 2 weeks there where I was pretty much left to my own devices a lot of the time. And I played that through twice, like, and that was great, like I've never had as much time to kind of just devote to just playing one thing over and over again like that. But wasn't a shared experience. I couldn't like talk to anybody about what happened, and that is such a big part of it, isn't it? Really,
Mhm.
like, do you remember when that happened in that game? Like, and
Yeah.
that was crazy. And you can't share that. It's just all in your head. Uh, so yeah, so for TCGs, LCGs rather, Arkham probably. I think it beats Marvel for me.
Okay.
I like Marvel for the fact that you can get that thing out and play it. It's
Yeah.
like a nice quick. To me, it's like an arcade experience. This
Yeah.
is why, in case anyone's wondering as well about the first player token and why we did a coin slot, right?
Yeah.
That is why, because it felt like an arcade game to us, like and so it just became this like natural thing to do that. Um, and then I got to say though, like it's funny because I'm open to anything. I will usually be the person that says, "What do you want to play?" Because I'm
Mhm.
happy to play everything. And so if I'm playing like, although I haven't played a game with my brother for a while, like his favorite game is Lord of the Rings LCG.
Okay.
So if ever we're together, that's what he wants to play, and so I can play that. Um, but yeah, that game's brutal.
Oh,
But
it's rough, dude.
it's just brutal. It's brutal. I think that's what he likes about it most, that it's a real challenge, like, and I mean, it's a theme win. We're crazy into Lord of the Rings. So yeah, it'll always go if someone wants to play it. Um, But for me, yeah, I think Arkham as a group is probably the most fun campaign wise.
Have you done all the campaigns now for Arkham Horror, or are you still kind of catching up? Okay.
No, catching up, definitely. Yeah, we've touched the last one we did all the way through was actually I want to say Mountains of Madness. It's not Mountains of Madness. That's just what it's based off. It is the Edge
Yeah.
of the Earth. Yeah. So we've still got to play through all of Scarlet Keys and Hemlock. Yeah, way behind, like way behind. And then we got Cthulhu coming out soon, right? So
It's nonstop, dude. It's nonstop. But what did you think about Edge of the Earth? Did you like it?
not as much as previous ones. Still to this day, one of my favorites is Dunwich. Dunwich and
Yeah.
Carcosa, I think, are just
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I liked Forgotten Age, but it was so really hard at the time, you know. But I love the theming. The theming's great, like, you know, the whole Indiana Jones like jungle stuff's great, but it was just insanely hard. I quite like Circle Undone, actually. You know, Dream
That wasn't
Chasers. You know, Circle Undone was all right. I like the theme of Circle Undone. You know, it's cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, Hemlock Vale appeals as well, actually, because we were trying to watch some films to get us in the mood for that one, and it definitely did. But we just haven't got around to playing that one. And I've heard it's really good as well. Like, you know, like
It's better in my opinion than the last two. Yeah.
Yeah. And I heard Scarlet Keys, while it had quite good. Well, it had this new, like, you can go where you want, right? You can kind of go and pick your own adventure almost, you know, like I heard it wasn't as good as the others, but yeah, as I say, we've only touched on those and we need to play them all the way through. So
Yeah, my issue with Keys was just that you would pop into certain areas, and because you didn't do something that you didn't know about ahead of time, it was like, oh, you just can't really do much here, and you can't come back. And it's like, oh, okay, cool.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, right. It was so weird, and it was like I was like, surely I made a mistake. Like I shouldn't have picked this place, and it was like, no, there was no way of like guiding you. It was a little too open. Like I love the idea. I think it's a cool idea, but it's just a little too much, you know.
Yeah.
And then
they brought it back for Hemlock, right? Like I've heard it's more
Hemlock,
like
they toned it down with the 3-day thing, and it was cool. It was very well done, or done much better. Definitely more of a fan of that one. So, Marvel Champions. Then, what's your favorite cycle of that?
Okay, the what? Well, I'm not favorite, but definitely the one that's got played the most is Core Set. You know, like I think that's partly because anytime a new hero came out, you'd usually play them against the Core Set guys first for some reason. Like, you know, as I say, I played through. Oh God, I remember the order they come in now. But
so you had the last one. You have Red Skull, right? Went through that.
Played for Red Skull, yeah. Enjoyed that one, yeah.
That was good. Guardians.
Again, I liked Guardians, but again, I think there was a very hard,
Ronan, right? Was he fun?
Ronan, right? Yeah. Even the Collector as well, right?
Yeah.
He wasn't easy, you know.
Yeah.
I played through that one, but never beat Ronan. By the way.
Yeah, don't bother. There's like a weird challenge a few of us YouTubers have. They're just like, all right, let's just be masochists and just like play them over and over and over and see who wins. And there's a couple of guys who are really good at it, but it's just I lose like half the time. It's rough, dude.
I mean, I haven't tried it, but I wonder, is it the sort of thing where you can just go, okay, I can't beat this guy, so I'm going to take Doctor Strange and then I'm going to beat him. Is that how it goes?
No, because because there's a time that Ronan, if all the stars align for him, he can do like 22 damage on one hit. Right, and you're just what am I going to do? Like, that's just not. And he overkills. So if you blocked it with an ally, he still hits you for 17 or whatever. And it's like, okay, cool. Like, that was fun.
And that's what Lord of the Rings feels like, though.
Yeah.
You can do everything right, and then you can just, you know, never mind.
Yeah, turned over the wrong card. And it's like, well, there's our game.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they are, aren't they?
Yeah. So then after that's Mad Titan Shadow.
Yeah, Mad Titan Shadow's good. Enjoyed that one. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Then Spider-Man Wave.
Yeah, I don't think we played that one all the way through, funnily enough. Where did we get to? I haven't played Venom.
Venom Goblin? Yeah, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
Don't bother, no?
Yeah. If you had a hard time with Ronan, get ready.
Really? Okay, he's
hard.
Okay.
And then there was all the X-Men stuff after that.
Then it was X-Men I really enjoyed. That was great. But then X-Men is probably, I mean, aside from Spider-Man and Iron Man aside, like big faves, like X-Men is where it kind of probably all started, I guess, back in the 90s when we were watching a
Yeah.
cartoon. So X-Men was quite a big deal. So it was really cool when they came around, like it's great to be able to play them. And as I say, I got to play that uninterrupted almost like twice, so that's cool. Played it with Cyclops, played it with Phoenix. But yeah, I mean, there's a whole bunch of heroes that I've got to now turn my attention to as well, right? So they just come out too fast, Jason. Just can't keep up, man.
Well, and that's my problem too. Like they'll come out, we'll play them a lot, and then I'll be like, oh man, I haven't played Thor or whomever, that's older hero or Captain America. It's like I want to go back and play all the old ones, but you just don't have time to do that,
Well, right, there's a new one out. Yeah, yeah. Is there any you haven't played? You
Oh no,
must
I
have
played
played
them all. I played them all. Yeah.
Silly question.
Yeah. No, it's the problem is like because like Magneto just came out, right? Who's
Yeah, yeah.
really fun, a lot of fun. But now it's like,
Yeah.
okay, I really want to go back and play some of the old ones. I can't even think of probably like Miss
Mhm.
Marvel or whatever. But it's just like, okay, then the Shield Wave's coming out, and then I play too much Marvel Champions. I'm like, I need to chill out with this game because I'm gonna burn myself out, and then I move on to a different game, and then I'm like, oh no, now I'm even further behind.
Yeah, yeah. What's your regular play? Like, how many games are you getting in a week then? Like, what's your
Of Marvel Champions,
everything? Everything, yeah.
so all right, so Marvel Champions, I could probably play probably about a dozen games a week, realistically. And
Yeah.
then other games, I only play like maybe two or three other games because they're usually longer and I don't remember the rules as well. So I have to like take
Mhm.
my time and just be like, okay, how do I play Chip Theory games, Hoplomachus again? Like, what's the process? And then, a 90-minute game turns into like 2 hours because I'm just
Yeah.
remembering the rules. And then that gets me stuck in a loop of just like, well, let me just play Marvel Champions because I know it like the back of my hand. So
Yeah,
it's
sure.
quicker,
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. And
Um,
also because you're playing these solo most of the time, right?
yeah,
So
and that's quicker.
so that speeds things up. The thing is about the solo when you're doing it is you're doing it on stream. So
Yeah,
it's not it's a shared experience with many other people, right?
it is. It becomes this fun thing where people just like meme on me because I get like Shadow of the Past all the time, and they're like, get better, and I'm just like, okay, I'm trying. It's just a
Yeah.
card draw.
Yeah. But do you have like a gaming group as well? Like that you play with regularly or
We did, and then everyone decided to have children and messed everything up, and then
yeah.
everything kind of took over with that. We originally started our gaming group like 2015 or so, 2014, playing like D&D, and then it just kind of evolved
Yeah.
into board games, and then it
Yeah.
just, we now and again, but not as much as we used to, unfortunately.
Mm. Yeah. You have a regular club, I presume that you
We don't have any stores by us. So I live in the middle of nowhere, dude. I mean, if you came out here, you'd just be like, where are the other people? And I'd be like, there is no other people. It's fantastic.
cool.
But yeah, so I think the closest store to me is about 90 minutes away, I think.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
and
Correct.
the bigger issue here, in my opinion, in the States is TCGs are bread and butter for all these stores. And so I get it. Like, when they have to play Magic and they have to play Pokemon
Yeah.
all the time and whatever. And I get it, you gotta make a living. But like if I showed up playing Marvel Champions, people would be like, we're not going to give you space or a table for that. We need to
No.
get our big games in. So unfortunately, I feel like the culture here isn't as well done as it is in England with it. I feel like you all kind of figured out a little bit better. And I think a part of it too is just there's so few stores spread out that like, hey, we have to cater to
Yeah.
a larger market.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we're much more tightly packed than that in that sense,
Yeah.
right? So that I've got more access to these stores. Our local down in Brighton, Dice Saloon. I would probably argue the same thing. They've got a whole section out the back which is pretty much dedicated to TCGs, right? So
Mm.
there'll be regular weeklies of Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh, those big ones, right? And then they'll have regular events for like SWU and stuff like that. But then they've got the other side of the space that does like all the mini wargaming stuff and things like that. And in fact,
Okay.
like the store manager there, he regularly plays Marvel Champions. So they
Oh,
have a
that's
regular
cool.
Marvel Champions night, which is quite cool. And I think there's at least 4 of them. Should probably get in on that. But it's just
Yeah.
find the time. Yeah.
Do you try to make it down the store like monthly, weekly, whenever you can?
Yeah, pretty much. It's never a hard and fast. We are going to Dyson every Thursday or anything like that. You know, so I'm only actually down in Brighton on. So I have like 2 nights down in Brighton, which is Thursday night and Wednesday night. What we typically do is like on a Wednesday night is when at least three or more of us will get together and play something, right? So there's usually one day for something we want to play most, or and then there'll be another day for something that we need to design for, perhaps, right?
Okay.
So we have to like this is part of the problem with not being able to play everything is that we have to play everything, right? So you haven't can't give anything your full. You know, gone are the days when I can just dedicate my life to X-wing. Like, you know,
Yeah.
I've got to play everything else, right? And trying to just keep on top of so many, say, TCGs or games, let alone games in general, right? It's just hard, like, you know. Ed, our lead designer, like he's big into Flesh and Blood. It's my
Mm.
fault because when he started, I said we need to design some more stuff for Flesh and Blood. Let me show you this game, you know, like and yeah, now he's like eighth in the country, or whatever, you know,
Wow,
like so,
really?
so he's doing all right, you know, like yeah, he's getting and he tends to sort of spend his time going around like you know, weekends attending events like in various places around. You know, he's even gone abroad. I mean, they recently just came back from Lyon in France. You know, like from a big Flesh and Blood tournament there, you know, like so.
That's
Yeah, he's really
awesome.
taking it seriously, and on top of that, he's got to play all these other TCGs that he's got to design, stuff like that. So yeah, yeah, yeah. Um,
When
so
it's the big group of guys, like how do you decide what to work on, or for as far as the work side of things when you get to play a game? Is it
yeah,
just like, okay, we have to keep going back to Marvel Champions? Is it, let's try a new game out to see if we can make new tokens for it? Like, how do you decide?
yeah, yeah, a lot of that. It's tough, you know, and I guess this is something we're kind of currently trying to figure out, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of the time in the past and still, like we'll go on our gut, you know. So
Okay.
like, is what do we want to make? What's big? What's new? What do we think is going to be popular? You know,
Mhm.
and that's actually a really bad way to run a business. You kind of want to have this data and information before, right? So we're trying to figure out ways on how we can do that, basically, you know. And what keeps coming into my mind is this kind of like the Kickstarter thing, right? Where you kind of get people to sort of like agree to something ahead of doing it, and then do it, you know. But it's not as easy as that, is
Yeah.
it? Because it's, I mean, how am I going to do that? Like, you know, if I say, okay, guys, if we make, like, it could be as simple as saying, right, there's this, let's take Root. Root is a board game that's been out for a while and
Mhm.
it's about to have a new expansion. And so it's currently on our design list because we're like, people still play this. We still get asked for this. You know, remember as well, there's a lot of people asking us for stuff. So if we get
Yeah.
multiple requests of something, that tells us something, right? But again, you're only going for a handful of people. So we kind of need to have some sort of voting system or a show of hands, essentially, a bit like when we did a sort of a poll for the next hero board that we should produce, you know, which was
Yeah.
great because that really gave us some direction as to what the community wanted most, you know. And if we could do the same thing with the games that we produced stuff for, you know, here's a list of the games that we've got in mind for making for. You tell us which ones you would want most, and we will make stuff for that, you know. Um, that's a start, but then again, our social isn't that big, you know. We're talking about a following of like 4,000 people on our socials, you know,
Yeah.
and we don't hear from all 4,000 people, right? Most people keep it to themselves. So yeah, it's the most vocal people that tend to influence our decision in that respect. So let it be heard that if you want something made, you need to think about it.
Well,
Yeah.
that's the thing. If you all ever started voting, it's like, okay, if the next hero board, the option is Valkyrie, I'm going to get my entire community to vote for that, and you will be making that board the next day. I'll just tell you that right now. So,
I mean, I'm pretty sure she was on the list, but I thought that it was like that because of just the sheer amount of these guys, the player boards there are to make for these. People like Valkyrie and Thor kind of fell into Asgard board, didn't they? Like, you know,
yeah, I mean,
yeah,
if you did an Asgard board, I think it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. I love her. I love her mechanics and how she works. I know the vast majority of the community hates her and does not like her. Yeah, oh, yeah, they hate her. But it's just, it is what it is type of thing. But nah, it's unfortunate. But yeah, no, it's very very true though, because like now that you'll have outside forces like there's big communities for Arkham Horror too, right? So if you put up to a poll for Arkham Horror and if like a content creator on the Arkham Horror side is like, oh, I really want that thing. Hey, community, go vote for that thing. Then it kind of gets weighted kind of weird.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah,
But
that's true.
have you when talking about Kickstarter stuff, have you ever thought about like Root? Let's take Root for a perfect example. Reaching out to that company and be like, hey, let's work together and let us know ahead of time and we'll make the parts and you can sell as an add-on, or is that just way too many moving pieces and whatnot?
Kinda is the short answer. Yeah. So that was another way to sort of not reverse engineer, but engineer the design factor in the first place, right? If you can be speaking with a games designer who is producing a new game, let's say, or they say the designer of Root and say, we would like to be your official makers of these tokens. Yes, 100%. That is something that would work for us. That is what we would like. That would be ideal, wouldn't it? Fortunately, we haven't done any of that yet, so we've got nothing under our belt to sort of like take to anyone in that respect. However, we have been approached by some smaller games designers or newer games that are coming out. I don't want to say anything yet.
Sure.
Nothing is nothing.
No contract. You can't talk about it. I get it.
But hopefully that will be the beginning of us, making official accessories for games, right? And then once you've got one, hopefully that snowballs into something else. That would be ideal. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I can't see FFG coming to us anytime soon.
Good luck. Good luck.
But we were at the Games Expo last year in the UK, and we had like the Arkham guys come over to us, like they're aware of us, like what we do, and it's cool, and I think we had it was Altered, the new TCG that just came. Right, so we actually play tested it there, but we had the designer of that game come over and said, who knew of us already, right, and said, "Oh, you guys should make something for this game. That'd be great." And we're like, "Oh yeah, okay, we'll come check it out." I came checked it out, liked it, and then realised Asmodee had made official products for this thing, right? Or rather, Gamegenic. Yeah. So it's like, okay, it's weird that the designer came and said you should make some stuff for this, knowing full well, or maybe he didn't know. I don't know. Like that Gamegenic were making official accessories for it.
The reason is, have you ever messed around with the Gamegenic stuff? Have you ever like bought it and like used it?
Yeah, the SWU tokens.
Yeah, it's because all their stuff feels so cheap. It just doesn't feel right. Like it
You
feels
say
off.
that because, well, that's not the impression I get from people when they talk about it. They love it, and
They just
I
don't
can't.
know better yet with Buy the Same Token. They just need to.
Well, maybe I don't know. Like it's take the SWU set for example. Like I think it's got this very tactile appeal to it. Certainly, when my first impressions of that set, if I'm being critical in any way, right?
Sure.
Is that it was like, oh, these are nice. They've got nice rounded edges, also a sharp, crisp laser cut line. Whereas these had these rounded edges. So it's like these have not been laser cut. This looks like a sort of injection molded token that's then placed in a jig. And I mean, I'm making assumptions here, but I'm making based off what making things, and they've been put in a jig and then they've been UV printed on top of that after that. That's a very laborious process, probably lends itself quite well to cheap labour markets, right? And then, but from a practicality point of view, I was like, they're flawed, in the sense that, okay, you could argue that they're quite big, so they're taking up a lot of space on that card. They're hiding a lot of art and all the rest of it, but they are visible, like no doubt, no question that you can read that. So there's that balance of legibility versus, practicality or whatever. But then they're also single-sided. So where's the intuitive nature to have half the amount of tokens that you need, as opposed to having to reach for another one rather than flipping something on a card, which is just easier.
Yeah, I before I got into your guys' stuff, I had some Etsy tokens or whatever, but they were one-sided, and I didn't realize how much it bothered me. Like because I put them all like in the storage bin or whatever. So when I take them out and I dump them on the table, half of them are upside down. So it's like, okay, flip them all over and whatever. Like it's small things.
That came on very early for me. So when back with the X-Wing stuff, and I was making single-sided stuff, I would put them into like a tackle box of like,
Yeah.
you know, to divide them up, and then go, well, they're upside down. I don't know which one's which, and if they're all sharing black acrylic, like what? That's just really frustrating. That's almost worse than the cardboard token, because at least the cardboard token's double-sided, right?
Yeah.
So it was almost like double-sided's got to be the standard, really. That is the premium, like, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Double-sided or bust, you know. Um, you know, so sometimes it's not necessary, right? Sometimes there are things that sit on a game board that never leaves that game board and just stays upright. And just by making it double-sided, sure, you're making it more premium, but you're also adding more cost for no real practical value, like, you know. So
Mhm.
it has its place, I guess, you know. But yeah, double-sided all the way, you know.
Yeah.
So um,
Well, I was gonna say too with kind of we talked a little bit about game jam, but just competitors in general, and we don't have to name names obviously and whatnot. But do you ever? I mean, because I feel like you all were one of the first ones on the scene, right? So you had a lot of time to kind of refine the process and go through things, and then you have a lot. I mean, you can go on Etsy or wherever and see there's a bunch of different competitors, and some of them are obviously just cheaply made because it's just some guy trying his best, and I get that. But do you ever look at competitors and go, "Wow, like someone came up with a good idea. I bet we can make that better." Or you look at it and go, you know, that's a good idea. Maybe there's a different way we could implement that into something else.
sure, sure. And I'm not going to turn around and say, "Yeah, we were the first that did that." No way. Like, you know,
Yeah.
I know there was stuff out there before we started, and I can name names if you like, you know.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like, you know, and there's plenty of things that have been um, that are clearly like, you know, oh, that's a version of our thing, you know,
Yeah.
like done in another way, and that's cool. You know what I mean? Like, you know, it's obviously inspired someone to do something as well with it, right? And it doesn't change anything, you know. Like
Yeah.
we'll all continue to do our own thing, you know. We're kind of doing that anyway. To as you say, if we ever see something that we think that's cool, we can do that to it and make it do that with it or whatever, you know. So we're all borrowing each other off at the end of the day anyway, you know. So you know, I think competition is good in the sense
Yeah.
that, you know, it's I don't know, it keeps us all on our toes, right? It's like you keep striving to do better then, don't you? If there's only one person making everything, then there's no drive to want to make a better product, like, you know.
I 100% agree because it's the same thing with like other creators will be like, "Hey, can I steal your idea for like this type of video?" I was like, "Yeah, go do it better if you can," because then I have to go do it better, and that's going to make it better for the end user.
Sure, sure, sure. Yeah, it's just cool. What it shows me when you see so many people doing. I mean, I say so many. There's not, right. What we do is quite niche. You know,
Yeah,
like
sure.
it's a third party accessory to a already kind of. I want to say niche product. I'm glad to see that this industry is just growing all the time.
Yeah.
You know, like so that's good. But when I see other accessory makers like ourselves doing it, I think, well, at least we're not the only ones. Like, you know, it means there's obviously demand for that,
Yeah.
right? If which we keep being shown year on year. You know, I still can't believe where we are really. You know, I'm not trying to blow our own trumpet or anything like that, but it's crazy to me that we are where we are now. You know, I have never thought this was always a sideline, right? This was always
Yeah.
just something that was just done. I did for myself because I had the ability to do it, and it's just crazy that it's just growing like that. You know, I don't know how much bigger it can get, really.
I'm sure. I'm sure it can keep growing. I mean, but like as you said, as the industry gets bigger, I mean, it's just going to naturally just grow alongside the industry. So, uh, but all right. So last thing to ask you about
Yeah,
is
yeah,
just the future by the same token.
yeah.
Is it kind of just right now we're going to keep designing games, we're going to keep doing the same thing, or is it you're always looking for like the next big thing to get into, or is it going to more trade shows? Kind of like what do you, or
Mhm.
maybe trying to get into markets you haven't been in before? Because I assume you kind of ship everywhere, but I'm not 100% sure.
We do. So it's a bit of all of that, really. I don't, you know, this is what I'm asked a lot. Where do you see yourself? You know, it's always that interview question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Where do you see yourself in 10 years' time? You know, and it's very hard to answer because I don't, I honestly don't know. I'm kind of letting it go where it goes. But we're trying out so many different things, like, you know. So we have started with retail, right?
Mm,
So we've been talking to local stores in the UK, not just UK, because this is mainly from people coming to us and saying, "Can I put your stuff in my shop?" You know,
yeah.
and it's there's been a lot of legwork. We're getting that to work. A lot of our products, we don't have huge margins on, you know, and so it's not a good deal for people to buy our website products and put them in their shops. It's just not a good enough margin for them to do it. So we've
Yeah.
been working on a retail friendly version that we can get into shops, which is essentially the same designed product on a single-sided variant, which drastically reduces the cost, allowing them to put them in stores, you know. So you're
Yeah.
getting a cheap product, but it kind of like the I guess the analogy over here is like you've got the I don't know if you have the same thing in the States, but like you've got the essentials range and then you've got the taste the difference range,
Oh, yeah,
right?
yeah.
Right. And there you go. Premium product and less premium product, right? But still with the same designs, you know. So that's the retail aspect of things. And then we got the trade shows. Yes, we went to get UKG last year. That was our second trade show. We actually went
Okay.
to a smaller one, Dragon Meet, which was a kind of D&D focused,
Mm.
really kind of trade show locally to where I live. So it was easy to attend. It didn't do so well for us, but we learned a lot from it. And then we went to UK Games Expo. We put a lot of effort and preparation into it, and it actually blew us away. Like we couldn't believe like it was like, okay, I guess we're doing this again next year, you know. So we're sort of preparing for that, you know. So we just got our stand booked for that, so we're definitely going to UKG this year.
Nice.
That's like next end of May, you know. So it's still
Okay.
a few months away, but we've got to start preparing for that. There's a lot to do, you know. And what was the other thing? Sorry, it was
Oh, just all the future stuff. If there's other new product lines you're thinking about expanding
yeah.
or whatever.
Yes, yes, there is. So we've with the addition of our new and amazing staff who are now, you know, when I was at uni, we didn't even have laser cutters. Now they go to uni and they learn 3D printing. You
Yeah.
know, so I worked with some 3D printing when I was working for architectural model makers and such. We had departments for that, you know, and we had to you make models around those, you know, and it was always this, oh, is this going to replace the model maker type thing, you know, but that was never the case because like you just can't get that hand finished. They're getting better and better all the time though,
Sure.
from when I was with them to where they are now. Um, but 3D printing is definitely something we're going to start with. We have acquired a 3D printer, and we're probably going to acquire some more. And we're not thinking of 3D printed tokens necessarily because I honestly think they're inferior. You know, I don't like the feel of them. They're
Yeah.
not there yet. You know, they're still rough. But they do have a place in like token storage systems, I believe. You know, at the very least. You know, like so. There are you may have seen in SWU like there's like the deck boxes that come with the SWU deck boxes, right? And then there's loads of people making like inserts that go into that tray
Okay.
compartment that holds all your tokens, you know. And that's the example I'll give you, you know. But we've had requests for that sort of thing over the years a lot,
Mm.
you know, like can you make a kill team caddy, you know, for all my tokens and stuff. And so it just makes sense that we would design one that would fit our token sets and that you would
Yeah.
have all of that in one package and not need to go to separate suppliers to pick those up, you know. So that's something we're going to be looking in the new year. We wanted to make it happen this year. We've got a studio move coming up like first thing next year, you know. It's meant to have happened already. I wanted to move in October, it got pushed back. We're not moving far, we're only going to the studio, we're swapping with our neighbor next door, right? So, which is great. So we've got a slightly bigger space than we had previously, but we were like, there's no point setting up this 3D printer now. We'll wait till we move, then we'll do it. But I'm excited about that. So yeah, looking forward to making some products for that. And then who knows, like, you know, UV printing possibly at some point, you know, at the moment, no. Um, Other than that,
That's it. Business
don't
as
know.
usual.
Yeah, pretty much. You know, yeah. See where it goes. You know, but never say never. You know, you're open to anything.
There you go. All right, Chris, man. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for talking to me today. And
Yeah,
this was
of
great.
course, of course. Happy to do it again if you're up for it. Yeah, we need to play a game or something. Play remotely.
There you go.
Okay.
There you go. I'll get you on stream. You can play, and then chat will just make fun of you as well, and it'll be great, and it'll be a great time. So
Yeah, sounds good.